How's it going, y'all? Rowdy Riles back with another video. So I just finished It Welcome to Derry. I also watched It Chapter 1 and 2 right before watching the last episode. So all the threads kind of came together, and I wanted to talk about the show because I feel like it was pretty good for the most part. So let's just get into It Welcome to Derry.
All of the tunnels are underground, where none of the children will ever be found.
So the first thing I want to say is that the show is probably a lot, quote unquote, scarier. Like I don't get scared, but I'm just talking about visually the way that the horror of the show is portrayed. There's a lot of very unsettling moments, which is awesome. That's something that I felt was particularly missing from It Chapter 2. It was more like jump scares rather than actual existential dread from an alien creature from another dimension hunting and stalking you and fattening you up with fear, essentially. So that was a really cool part of the show. I really enjoyed the portrayal of Pennywise by Bill Skarsgård, the entire cast. And this is the thing I've said before when it comes to shows that have younger actors in the lead. Most of the cast do a great job convincing you that they're scared, that this is a real situation, that they're actually in danger. And you get attached to these characters over time. So when something happens to a character, you're like, oh, they won't do that. That's just it. Well, they did that. So there's a lot of that in this show. So you grow attached to these characters, especially the crew later on in the show after like episode 2 or 3. And you're just like, oh man, I don't want anything to happen to these kids. And it's an extension, a prequel to the movies, to the lore. And Pennywise's thing is that he eats children. So like you can't expect that to not happen. So there is a lot of horror in the show. There is a lot of scary moments. There is a lot of tension, and there's a lot of lore building. There's some lore that I'm sad that they skipped out on again, mostly in reference to Matoran, the turtle, the person that created the universe and Pennywise and all that kind of stuff. But they didn't get into that, so I won't get into that. They keep referencing turtles. You keep seeing turtle references all throughout the show, and I'm like, they're going to bring up the giant turtle, right? No, they never do. So don't expect that. I will say the setting of the show is set around when the book was initially set. So it's in the 50s, 60s, around that era. So between those 2 decades, something like that. And then, of course, there's flashbacks to like 1908 and other cycles and all that stuff. But it was nice to see the mid 1900s setting, 50s, 60s. That was nice because, like I said, the original book was set in that. And then, of course, in the new movies, they moved it up to the 80s so they could have them come back at modern times as adults and deal with Pennywise again. And there's a lot of references to the movie. Obviously, it's led by the same guy who did the movies. Stephen King didn't really have anything to do with the show, but he approved the material and all that stuff. And you do get to see some other characters and hear some references and see some references to other Stephen King stuff. Dick Halloran, of course, is in the show, and that is a character from The Shining and Doctor Sleep and other Stephen King books. He's been in quite a few Stephen King books, actually. So it is nice to bring more of the King lore into the Pennywise movie universe. And then in the last episode, I feel like you see something that's kind of a reference to The Mist, but I don't want to get into spoilers. Obviously, it doesn't have the same effect or do the same stuff, but it is very like Mist-esque. So there's some references in there that you'll catch. And I just want to say, like, the last episode, okay, so the build up to the last episode is absolutely insane. And then the last episode starts feeling a little goofy in parts. And that was a little disappointing to me, having just watched, the entire first half of the show and then the 2 movies. And then I watched the season finale and I was like, ooh, some of this is a little cartoon-esque, but it all comes together in the end. I feel like it had a solid ending past that stuff, looking aside that stuff. And like I said, the cast is all very, very good at portraying the terror. There's Lily, there's Marge, there's Rich, there's Will, Lonnie. All those child actors did a great job portraying their characters. And even the adult actors, you have Hanlon, Mr. Hanlon, I forget his first name. Is it Tom? I don't remember. But the father of Will, who is Mike's father. And then, Will's mother. You have Lonnie's father, who there's a whole subplot of something happening with him, and all the actors are done very well. There's not a single person that is weak here. I will say the actress that plays Lily, though, seems a little like too playing into it at times. Like she's a little bit too hammy. Like, no, I would not. If you've ever seen like The Happening with Mark Wahlberg, the M. Night Shyamalan movie. There's a line from Mark Wahlberg where he's like, "No, I would never do that." And there's a lot of delivery that is kind of like that level coming from the actress that portrays Lily, which is it's understandable, but it's just like a questionable choice to me. It kind of took me out sometimes. And then there's a whole subplot that they just added in the last episode attached to something, and it explains what's happening with that character, but it just comes off as over the top and goofy. So there are a couple of weak parts, but nothing that is overly like, oh man, this show sucks. This is ruining the whole show for me. And then the penultimate, the season 7, oh, that was heartbreaking. That was horrifying. Because the thing about Derry is Pennywise isn't always the one doing the violent, horrible things. It's kind of worse when it's real people doing it to other people. And there is some of that in the show, especially in that episode. We get into the origins of how Pennywise took on it took on the form of Pennywise, which is nice. They do some explaining to that, at least as far as the movie is concerned. And there's just a lot of cool things to appreciate in the show. One of which is the music. The setting, of course, is Derry, Maine. We've seen it before, but it's very pristine. It's very pretty until it's not. And then it gets very ugly and very dark. And you're just like, some lighting and some mood changes really changes this setting. And you can really appreciate all that stuff. You can tell that love and care was put into this show, into the writing, into the special effects especially. So I will say that It Welcome to Derry is a welcome, no pun intended, addition to the It canon as far as the movies and all that stuff. A lot of bits and pieces were taken from other books that are thrown in there, characters and stuff. So there is more Stephen King lore in there, which is really nice to see. And I will say, if you're at all a horror fan, if you're at all a Stephen King fan, go watch this show. You'd be doing yourself a disservice not to watch it. So please check that out. If you guys like this review, smash like, hit subscribe, become a channel member for 99 cents. Comment, let me know if you agree, disagree, if you've seen it, if you're waiting, if you like the movies, if you've read the book and only the book, how your day is going. Just say hey, do all that stuff. Keep your head up, stay brave, be kind to your local LGBTQ community. I love y'all. I will see you next time, and bye-bye. I'm Pennywise, the dancing clown.
Return to
Found a mythical Walmart end cap.
Ah, Morty, you're still watching this crap, isn't this? To review figures and toys and stuff. Aren't you a little old for toys? Ah, geez, Rick, you know, I don't think you should call her a bitch, and I kind of like her videos, so maybe you should shut the up. Q, Morty. Q.